merits respect. And actually another translation, which is the Art Scroll translation, which, you know, I like their stuff because it's Pirkei Avot with great commentary.
Is that the Schottenstein? Is that the Schottenstein?
I'll pass this around, you can take a look. Anyway, so.
Art Scroll has it on sale right now.
Worldly occupation.
The Schottenstein, well.
You know who the Schottensteins are, by the way?
No, I don't. I just
Big
know they're
lots.
expensive. Oh,
No,
big lots.
No, they aren't.
They're
That's been sold a long time ago.
What am I
Started
doing?
anyway, didn't they?
Yeah, right. Out of Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, so here we are reading Pirkei Avot between Pesach and Shavuot.
That's not.
It's customary for you to read one chapter of Pirkei Avot every Shabbat during the period from Pesach to Shavuot. This custom is mentioned by Abu Darham and Rabbi Menachem Azariah, the Rema, in Ma'amar 14. It appears as well in the work of Eretz Hayat. Various reasons have been given for this custom. One reason is that during this period we are preparing ourselves for accepting the Torah on Shavuot, and therefore learn Pirkei Avot, the bulk of which contains motivational material about the importance of Torah study and mitzvah performance.
Okay, so Pirkei Avot is actually Talmud, but it's a tractate that we almost put off on the side and don't really think about it often as Talmud. But the underlying theme is ethical.
It's like early Talmud.
Like early Talmud.
But it was written when?
500, I don't know. How, when?
Shouldn't
Do you
it have
have
been
a number?
later? I mean, if you talk Talmud, you talk
100,
400.
200? No, it should be earlier.
I
I mean, somebody
wrote it, and I mean, it's defined, the guy who wrote it. I thought it was in 12.
it may be in the front.
I didn't have the lens open.
Okay, well, that makes it more interesting.
Well, we could hear it.
I
It's
read
not
that
Schottenstein.
it was written
Schottenstein did Talmud.
by the sages as
No,
a
they also did
response
Pirkei Avot.
I
for the
didn't.
change
I
in
know they did Talmud for sure.
practice
Yeah,
of Judaism.
we had samples of it this weekend, and I was looking at it.
My mind or something.
Leviticus, no, way before that. Leviticus,
It's Talmud, so it has to be like.
Well, I'm not so sure it's Talmud, that's why I asked him the question.
Okay.
Leviticus talks all about, the center of Judaism is the temple, and it's surrounded with sacrifice and Kohanim. After the destruction of the temple, and after the dispersion, the center of Judaism shifted to the individual, individual practice, individual mitzvot.
It was,
An individual
You can
responsibility.
Google Pirkei Avot, yeah.
it's written by the rabbis of the Mishnah period,
That
which
was
puts it like 200.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, we're on the project. Somebody usually has theirs in the end.
This one is pretty well, got some nice notes in it. That always makes it more fun.
Okay, so, Alan, you were furthermore, at furthermore.
Furthermore, this is the period where, when the weather becomes warmer and more pleasant, it increases the temptation of physical vice. We seek to quell this effect and restrain the Yetzer Hara by studying the words of Musar presented in Pirkei Avot. The third reason is that unlearned Jews would come to the synagogue for Mincha on Shabbat, and thus became customary to read Pirkei Avot, so they can learn the Musar of our sages.
What's Musar?
Musar is tradition, so.
It's also part of the conservative service, isn't it, Musar?
Masorti is probably the word that you're looking for. It's a root which indicates like specifically ethical teachings. Even though they started out in Talmud, they have more heavily attributed to Luzzatto in the 1800s.
That's the Italian.
Chaim Luzzatto.
That's the Italian. Furthermore, the sages famously teach that Derech Erete kadma Torah, proper manners must come before Torah, and therefore, since much of Pirkei Avot is devoted to matters involving Derech Erete, we read these Mishnayot as part of our preparation for the acceptance of Torah on Shavuot. So, if we say Derech Erete is culture, and if we say Derech Erete is worldly occupation, then we are saying that culture and worldly occupation is before Torah.
True.
And how can you say that? Only if you recognize that without worldly occupation and the ability to learn within the culture in which you're existing in the diaspora, will you succeed in being able to learn Torah.
And a nice drush on it, Derech Erete, here they translate as proper manners. So that's yet another, maybe we should just put that up there, proper manners. And we're going to deal with the one that specifically speaks to,
It sounds like it's a protocol,
well, it's how we come together as a group, right? It's how we travel through the world, what we're doing, the way of the land. So, do we have respect? Are we not respectful? How do we move through the world?
A partner with that idea, and I can't think of the proper English word, is the in Hebrew we say minhag haaretz kedin.
Yes, the minhag shemakom is the din. So
Okay,
whatever-
so if it's the culture in the society,
it's
that's
the
the
halakha
law.
or it's the law.
That's the law. So if that's the law, and Torah's the law.
Not the law, but the
Actually,
tradition.
minhag is custom. So if you
Custom,
have a
okay.
particular custom, and this is the custom of how you open Torah, this becomes halakha in the particular.
So I was just using a word for custom.
Customs.
I said
Custom.
tradition.
Custom, yeah. Okay, all right, so this reason is mentioned by Abu Darda.
Abu Dhabi.
Okay, so Diane, you want to pick up the next paragraph, please?
Let Mike.
Mike,
No,
finally.
okay. Finally, the period which Rabbi Akiva's students perished is the period of din, divine judgment, which naturally causes people to become more conscientious and God-fearing. As people's hearts are more open to religious admonitions during these weeks, we read Pirkei Avot, whose teachings are likely to affect us specifically in this period. It is thus proper for everyone to follow the time-honored custom to read Pirkei Avot every Shabbat between Passover and Shavuot. Our practice is to observe this tradition by delivering
Drashot.
drashot, thank you, on the material of Pirkei Avot during these weeks of Mincha on Shabbat.
So after Mincha on Shabbat, some people do drashes, if you're going to be at shul all day anyway, what a great, fodder for the drash. Good opportunity.
Well, there's another reason for it.
Well, okay, here's a Mike method.
Absolutely.
Footnote.
Idle minds create problems.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
and-
mind offer solutions many
Well, but
times.
look, they're saying that,
Sometimes,
the
but-
pleasant weather increases temptation. So,
Where do you
So
read
we're
that?
Well,
That
in
was
the
actually the
paragraph
second
before you
paragraph.
read.
that was the one you read.
Fiscal delights?
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, we know why when all that
It's
goes
the
Fourth
away.
second-
line down,
In the
second
middle of the
paragraph.
second paragraph.
Second paragraph, fourth line down. Okay, Karen, you want to pick up 8 there? So this is actually, while we were at the Shabbaton, we did like a lot of the beginning, like first verses. So we're going to run through some of these here. This is the rest of chapter 3.
All right, number 8. Rabbi Elazar of Bartota said, "Render to him that which is his, for you and all that you have are his. As David said in Chronicles, for all things come from you, and of your own have we given you."
This sounds similar to something that you find in the New Testament.
Oh, render under Caesar's. Well, of course. In fact, I have a new book, which the rabbis in town, we were all going to study, but we have been kind of slacking, I need to say on that. It's called Kosher Jesus, which basically puts a perspective with regard to Jesus in his time and the things that he said. And it's based primarily on the work of a Talmudic scholar, Maccabee, who wrote Paul the Mythmaker. It's a very interesting kind of concept that,
That was on TV the other day, the Jewish Jesus.
oh, the Jewish Jesus. Okay, so
No,
Now, I
it
have-
was on the History Channel, very well done, and probably covered some of the same material.
yeah, I find it interesting.
Where
in
is
terms of-
Bartota?
I don't know the answer to that, but Alan, if you pick up the next thing,
Right?
we'll see if we can find Bartota.
Rabbi Jacob said, if a man is walking by the way and is studying, and then interrupts the study and says, "How fine is this tree?" or "How fine is this plowed field?" Scripture regards him as though he was liable for his life.
What does
Okay,
that
why
mean?
is that?
What does
But
that
that's
mean?
very.
Right, but I mean, just think about it. So what did this guy do when he was walking on the field?
Well, he stopped, he interrupted his study.
To do
to-
what?
smell
To
roses.
judge, to judge?
No,
No.
he was magnificent in God, wasn't he?
Was he?
Sure, I think
Well,
so.
you know-
How fine is this tree?
Okay.
God created this fabulous, wonderful tree.
So apparently he's liable for his life, which sounds like a kind of a negative connotation.
But why?
Daydreaming while one is studying seems to be the underlying theme.
That you're losing your focus and.
No, you could be
stay
studying the
focused.
book, and then you're confronted with something that shows the magnificence of God. Then your
Well,
mind
Well,
wanders from the book
let
to
me
God.
give
I
you
agree
the
with
art
you.
scroll
Send
like
me
paraphrase
Bible.
here. Since danger lurks on the road, the interruption of Torah study under such circumstances is a particularly grave error. By forfeiting the protective power of Torah, one leaves oneself vulnerable to the dangers. Alternatively, this dictum is equally applicable at home. But the Mishnah uses a situation where interruptions are likely to occur, like on the road. The obligation to study is a constant, all-encompassing one from Deuteronomy. You shall speak of them when you sit in your home, when you go up and away, when you retire, and when you arise. Right? We know from the Vahavta. In response to this constant focus, the Torah spreads its protection over us. So that's
In
the
this
same
Sanhedrin,
position.
I am of the minority opinion.
Okay.
I'm thinking
Well,
that, I'm
and
thinking
Karen
that
agrees with me.
you're just, I think what they're trying to say with you're liable for your life is that you really, you're not supposed to lose your focus. Kind of like why they have the Mahitza in the Orthodox. You need to, you need to stay focused on your prayer and not be distracted by something beautiful.
No daydreaming, right? At least according
Well,
to
and,
yeah.
right, I
We're
mean,
distracted all the time in our discussions here.
that there is that.
that's right.
Are we liable for our lives?
Well, because we're discussing and we're not praying or davening, really, we're discussing.
As opposed to doing Torah study. Are we not Torah studying?
Well, we,
Who here is the Apikoros? Who here is the apostate?
Me.
it's always him.
You know, there's numerous ways to take this, and I
Right, I
can
agree.
understand this point. But you know, if you're, and it goes back to you shouldn't study by yourself. And
Well said. Well said.
But you can't tell me that if you're sitting here, and I don't know if you ever experienced the aroma, the bloom of the grapefruit tree. And a grapefruit has such a wonderful aroma, and it used to fill my whole family room. And when you
Like a
when you
lemon
would
tree.
sit there, and you would be studying, and that aroma would come into you. If you're studying about God, and that aroma comes in, how could you doubt God's existence?
Okay,
So
so I
if
think there's
I could-
probably two different ways to look at
you know,
this.
I could see
We
tremendous arguments in Talmud
Well,
on
that's
this.
what-
Okay, which is
That's
often
what
the
I
case.
say. I'm of the minority opinion.
So let
We're
me,
enjoying nature.
let's go back to the question with regard to Elazar ben Yehuda of Bartota.
Oh yeah, where's he from?
He was a Tana of the third generation, a colleague of Rabbi Akiva's and a student of Rabbi Yehoshua's. He was famed for his magnanimity and that charity collectors actually hid from him out of fear he would donate his last penny. The Talmud reports that he once met a charity collector while on the way to purchase his daughter's, a trousseau for his daughter. The collector tried to run away, but Rabbi Elazar accosted him and forced him to reveal the cause for which he was collecting. When he told that it was for the weddings of orphans, he declared, "They come first." He handed over almost all his money. Now there's a
you believe that,
notion, right?
I have a bridge to sell you.
Well, there's a notion that somebody would be so giving that the charity
Sounds like the
collectors
bakers.
The bakers?
Yeah, you know, Jim and Tammy, it's like they just had that, they just appeared on television and everybody gave them money.
Right, but they would have to be giving. So whoever, the people out in the world would be
Heavy
so
fade.
Yeah.
giving.
And he's still on TV.
That's amazing.
No kidding.
Yeah, he has a program. It's on
I'm
channel
saying it was,
367,
it seemed very.
right next to
It seems
JLTV.
like they had that.
So he didn't have the type of charisma, he just kept giving money. So, okay, all right.
So we still don't know where, the town-
Bartoto is specifically,
Yeah.
we know who he was a,
Well, that means he's in the northern Galilee. It's fine.
near Akiva,
Akiva, yeah.
wherever Akiva was
Yeah,
at the
northern
time.
Galilee.
Okay, so
Because I can't find it.
10. Yeah, we actually do have a lovely little book, which has a map. I've looked it up. Bartota does not appear in a search, at least a cursory search. So we do have our map. Thanks, Mike, for checking it out. But I'm not sure if Bartota is
It's not there, I can't.
one of our maps that we've got in our appendix for.
It could be Bar Tota, which means
Could be.
the son of Tota. You don't know that because this is an English
Well, we've got
alliteration.
I thought that would be Ben Tota. Ben
No,
is son
Bar.
of-
Bar mitzvah.
Right, I thought Ben
To be
is
bar.
son of.
that is correct in Hebrew. In
Uh-huh.
Aramaic, it's bar.
Oh, okay.
So with
But it
regard
wouldn't say
to
of.
And down on 4th Street, it's Bar also.
Yeah, that's right.
it
And
does-
people like Ruth.
It does not appear that it is a bar son of Tota, at least if you're wanting to look, it's one.
I'll take your word, Rab.
Moving on to 10. Rabbi Dosai ben Yanai said in the name of Rabbi Meir, he who forgets one word of the study, Scripture regards him as though he was liable for his life.
So there it's explained.
For it is written in Deuteronomy, to take care and watch yourself closely, so as to not forget the things that your eyes have seen. Could this apply even if a man's study was too hard for him? Scripture says, nor to let it slip from your mind all the days of your life. Thus a person is not guilty unless he deliberately puts those lessons away from his heart.
Okay, so are we guilty if we lose some of our lessons? At least the upshot of this bottom line here is Rabbi Meir says, not unless you're deliberately putting those away. Okay.
The feeling that I get from it is that it's not like studying lighthearted poetry. So it's kind of like what you're studying has such content to it that it's on a different level of being involved with.
And also, they would indicate that if there's some protective measure, everyone studies as a protective measure.
Actually, I'm picking up something really different. I'm picking up on what happens with secular Jews. A lot of them will go through their bar.
Anybody glass of water?
They take an oath, really, to keep their Judaism with them the rest of their life, and then I think they intentionally
What?
disconnect.
So
They disconnect.
You're
They just
reading into Rabbi Meir's comment that one should always continue on into our study, and I think the sages would generally speaking agree one should always continue to study. Okay, 11. Does anyone pick up?
What else would I say?
Well, I think we're headed this direction. After Alan, it would be Sheldon.
Well, I'll tell you what Rabbi Kahuna will say. And Dosa said,
Karen.
What?
We usually
We're
go in
on
a
11.
circle.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said, you told me to read.
Rabbi Hanina ben Doza said, he in whom the fear of sin takes precedence of wisdom, his wisdom will endure. But he in whom wisdom takes precedence of his fear of sin, his wisdom will not endure.
Okay, so essentially fear of sin is
If
the
you,
method.
if you're afraid of sin before wisdom, the wisdom is going to endure. Ooh, I don't agree with that one. But if you have wisdom before fear, the wisdom will not endure.
So I guess we could pull that one apart.
Yeah, let's do, because wisdom takes precedent of his fear of sin.
Why don't we, Diane, could you pick up 12 and then we'll look at them both together?
Okay. He used to say, he whose works exceed his wisdom endures. But he whose wisdom exceeds his work, his wisdom will not endure.
Okay, so we've had like 9 and 10 are going to tell us, study, be very intent. But we've got 11 and 12 that are going to say, fear of sin is really important, as is our works. Whatever we're doing in the world to try to be out there doing our mitzvah.
Boy, I am a very, very vocal and adamant I'm against that statement. I think that this idea of sin being the motivating factor, well, I think that's wrong.
That's just gone out with the wind. We don't have any worry about sin anymore because sin's just not important.
Fear of sin?
Fearing
Well-
sin is not important anymore. Is that
Well,
what
it sounds
you're suggesting?
No, I'm
reptilian.
saying, well, how can you define sin to begin with?
It sounds like reptilian
There's lots
brain.
of ways to define sin, right?
I think what Sheldon is saying is that fear of sin is wrong when you're trying to study and learn. Because if you're fearful, and that's what's on your mind, then your mind's not open to study and to learn.
In modern terms, I'd call it the reptilian brain. That fears your motivation to stay inside the fence.
Related to the 10 levels of morality.
Colbert?
Yeah.
It was interesting that Reb Solomon brought that up. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It really is. So there are many different ways that people move through the world. Some people fear punishment, and that's the bottom line basic. People who do the right thing because they know what the right thing is, and they persistently.
Believe they know what
This is with regard to Colbert. I'm not going to.
This is a theorist,
This is
a
actually
human
a theorist
theorist.
who says people who follow their
development.
unconscious because they do and know and believe and will, hold those ethical, moral values high, then that's perhaps a different situation. It's like Maslow's hierarchy. We're probably all familiar with that. Food is at the bottom, self-actualization's at the top. We all, sort of, if we don't have the basics, we can't ever get to the top. That's at least according to Maslow.
We'll see if you can look at me and know mine's the opposite way.
Don't you, do you agree, or does everybody here agree, that the idea of sin and the fear of sin relates very closely to fundamentalists in any religion?
Yes.
It can. It
All of
can.
them.
On that note.
I think a lot of people follow laws because they're of the fear of punishment, and that's why we have order. I think a lot of uniform religion was created to have out of fear, to have order and control.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that from.
But I'm not so sure it relates in study of Torah. But I think in general, uniform religion of all religions is created to have order.
I think
Laws are created.
One thing we may be hung up on is that sin is kind of a loaded word.
It is.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And because of what you're saying. But if you don't think of the word sin, you think.
You can put it on silent.
I don't know how.
You think of the word.
I'm
Your
challenged.
ninja geek.
I'm challenged. I'm very challenged. I'm sorry, guys.
You think of like right and wrong.
Or punishment and reward.
Punishment and reward.
Well, how many different words for sin is there?
A lot.
4, 5?
But definitely the word sin does have a.
But I'm not so sure I like either one of those statements in 11 or 12, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, just think of just the Rebbe who just saw, look at all the wisdom he has, and I would say his wisdom is enduring.
But he also writes about some things.
And it's pretty heavy-handed on the Yirat Hashemayim. Yes.
He says, well, should I condemn myself at this point in my life for the sins I have done as a younger man? He goes, no, I'll just continue to add it up, to let the ledger add itself up, and then God will decide.
Well, just think of how overworked we are as Americans.
I think you're
We're
right.
just so overworked, and sometimes we're not. We are just almost condemned to our lifestyle that we can't even make any time for wisdom. And I don't want to be punished for that, but so I don't want to be punished for that because I don't have the time.
If nothing else, I think that these pieces are provocative, and whether you choose to delve into them, accept them or not accept them.
So it's like a software program where it's layered? We can look at the different
people get
layers.
out of it, what, based upon tradition, experience.
Well, because sometimes fear is synonymous with awe. So if we were to
Are we looking
frame,
at awe of sin?
no, of God.
Okay,
So if we were to actually take fear and put it into a different context than the reptilian fear, we might get something different from it. Because those two words have often been used interchangeably in older texts as well as newer texts. Yes?
Well, the basic premises of giving people under control to believe.
Under control.
Well, no, in religion you have to control people.
Yep.
Okay, and if you look at the example of what the Catholic Padres did in Central and South America, in order to control the people and get them away from their religion, they incorporated part of their pagan religions, or the religion that they had, into Catholicism. And that was the only way they could control the people to get them to convert. And that's why if you look at Catholicism,
Little genocide thrown in there too.
in Central and South America is totally different than Catholicism that comes out of Rome. And even though that was
Conquistadors.
One of the emphasis, one of my experiences that emphasizes what you just said, Mike, in Chichicastenango in Guatemala,
I've been there.
before Easter, when you come out of the church, Catholic church, people come out of Catholic church, they go right to the market and they buy a chicken. And they buy this chicken and they twirl it around and they do an Erev Tafshilin, and then they snap the neck, and that is a Catholic ritual using an adoptive Jewish idea that occurred in order for them to be able to cook on before the holiday through the Sabbath. And so it's one religion mixing another one in because that's what the people wanted, and so those guys Catholicized it. If there was such a word.
You were
Right,
at
that-
Chichicastenango? Yeah, it was something. When I went, it was Mayan priests sitting inside the temple, and I'm wearing shorts. And I went, ooh, not smart.
so with regard to various religions, I think that probably the weekend was an interesting sort of opening into that word we call deep ecumenicism, in terms of not only just somehow respecting another religion, but the one comment that I thought was very interesting from the Sufi imam, or sheikh, was that people have multiple different belongings these days. That while you may have a primary Jewish notion, there may be elements of additional identity that you carry for whatever reason, which I think is kind of a uniquely renewal.
Doctrine.
Not so uniquely renewal?
Because in my past service synagogue, we had a lot of Buddhist practices.
Right, Rabbi Allen, sure. Yeah.
So I don't think it's that unique.
Did you used to go to Temple Shalom in San Francisco?
Sure.
Oh, I used to do that. But that was before Alan Rue and Alan Trance was there. And then before that, when the picture. Right. So, Alan Rue was a New Age kind of guy.
Well,
He was.
Yeah.
For conservatives, he was a New Age guy.
but he also, he was very educated. And I thought that this was a very eye-opening meeting to learn about these shared practices, and also to reconsider our relationship with Muslims, our relationship with Christians.
Yeah, but if you ask the two mainline factions of Islam, Sufism is not Islam.
However that works for people. I mean, certainly the Sufis believe that they're
They're the main line.
part of Muslim tradition.
Yes, but if you ask the two, the two Shiite and the Sunnis, you don't want to be, or someone who's Sufi. I mean, that's could be almost, that could be lower than being Jewish.
So with regard to the zikr or the davening, any thoughts about those from anybody who was
Well,
there?
that was
Just
very,
saying.
very different. So at one point we were doing a prayer to God, but it was using the name Allah to God, which is pretty far out there as a Jewish practice.
Uh-huh.
And, you know,
Excuse me, using the owl?
We were doing a
Olive,
chant.
that's even out there. This goes a little bit beyond that.
Yes.
Well, but he explained it, that it was, that we're all using God, and that was his
Yeah,
word for God.
olive is a valid name of God.
I was actually wondering if we could have changed that to our own comfort zone, but that wasn't really kind of part of the practice, but
Well, remember there was one part, it was like la la ya, and then you say hi, something hi, so I always added that hi part to it. We were doing one where we'd go to the right, then to the left, then to the right, and it was like la la ya, la, but then hi, I, so because the Rebbe added in that hi part. You remember?
Yes, but it was, I think, somebody was Chai, and I can't remember who the Chai person was, but
But
there
it
was
was
like,
Rebbe who added it in, because
Okay.
I was listening to him, and then I
Yeah, I
started
was
to follow
listening.
him.
yeah,
I was paying attention to what you were saying.
yes.
So, because it was very instructive, very educational. So, you know, and it makes us kind of remember that, you know, the God of Ishmael is Allah. It's the God of Ishmael. Sorry. So, you know, Allah is an equally valid name of God as you think of.
did you feel comfortable saying it?
No.
If you
But I can intellectually think about it.
Well, I
if
thought
you're an
changing
Arabic
that the other-
speaking Jew
Uh-huh.
and you live in Yemen
Mhm.
and you read Aleph Lamed, it would sound like Ella, because they don't have that miftah, that pronunciation of the L sound where it's cut off.
Mhm.
And so that's, in my view, that's the transition between the Hebrew El and the Allah.
Well, sometimes I was even confused when the young woman started to sing. It sounded very Arabic when he was singing, but I wasn't sure if maybe that's the way some of the Jews do it in Israel as well.
Sure.
So I was a little confused on what I was.
In terms of
Understanding.
some of the translations,
Yeah.
the interesting piece was putting the Shema along with the Quran piece
Right.
that says a similar kind of thing.
Right.
If you took and you went to an Arabic country where there were still a lot of Jews, if that's possible, and you listen to and if you listen to the chanting in a synagogue, and you closed your eyes and you had a radio dial, somebody in front of you turned that radio sound down and turned up the chanting from the mosque and turned it up. And if you weren't familiar with the languages, you couldn't tell me which one
The
was which.
same music, the same intonation.
Well, I know, and I was a little
Right,
confused.
but the
at
question
first.
is can we also equally chant Brahmin or whatever additional
The
name?
Buddhist name.
Right.
Ganesha.
Absolutely not.
Well, why does one have?
It's the same question. Can you chant Allah? And if so, under what circumstances can you
Uh.
chant Brahmin, which is the Hindu version?
Absolutely not, never. Because you have a statement in Judaism called Am Sidura.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know.
We are separate people.
So where's the edges? Where's the edges?
Buddhism is not a monotheism.
It's not Buddhism, it's Hindu, and Hindu actually does seem to indicate that there's a overall Brahmin picture, which is not usually what we're taught, but apparently according to the Hindu, it's kind of an interesting piece.
Well,
Yeah.
I just think there's so many different traditions that you don't have to overlap the traditions like Islam and Judaism and Hinduism. I think you can follow it the way that keeps it in line with that tradition and still have respect for the other ones. So considering that Allah is generally associated with Islam, then it might cause that discomfort because it's outside the recipe. I'm going to call them recipes. Different traditions have different recipes, and when you start bringing in those other elements, then you start changing the mix so much that is it any longer that tradition?
Right.
How
So the
do you
question is,
want
where
that
do
to
you put
look?
the- Where do you put the borders? At
Because
what
I'm-
juncture does one
Because there's that Orthodox, you said the guy had an Orthodox background and he has a website where he's incorporated Native American traditions into his practice in a shamanic Judaism
Who,
blend.
The Rebbe?
No, this is a different, he's a
Rabbi
renewal guy.
Gershon,
I could find his website, I'd have to dig, but all I'd have to do is shamanic Judaism and he'd pop right up. I think it's called thewalkingstick.com.
It sounds right.
Right.
But
But it's basically Judaism with a flavor of shamanism, but the core is Judaism.
You know,
the ninth,
Like and then Shelton.
the ninth verse in my head just lost it. In
Lahadi?
yeah, the ninth verse. What's the ninth verse?
Bo
You sing it every first, huh?
Shalom.
No, that would be
That's-
Jim.
No. The ninth.
Yaminu small. Yaminu small.
And it tells you your difference.
Anyway,
And even if you use this as your proof text, Mike, how does that get us there? It's not, if you're looking for one, there's a cedar right over here. Top shelf. Sheldon, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say that in my misspent youth,
Cedar.
when the rabbis were teaching the youngsters, and they're not so youngsters,
Take a left, look up on to your shoulders, up,
What
there you
you
go.
were teaching youngsters?
When,
the
yes,
rabbis were teaching us,
Yeah.
this is in the 50s and the 60s and even into the 70s, they taught the following. Know your Judaism first, spend your time becoming extraordinarily knowledgeable, and then wander off, so that you have enough of a base to recognize, understand, and acknowledge others.
I agree with that. but-
Unfortunately today, we flit around like bees in a garden. We go from this flower to this flower to this flower to this, and we don't spend enough time learning about our own stuff before we learn about other stuff. And that, I think, for me, is one of the basic objections that I have to the incorporation of learning about Buddhism or learning about shamanism or learning about the American Indian culture, because most people who are doing that really don't have enough of a basis in Judaism.
Didn't I say that when we read like chapter 2?
Yes, you did. I'm emphasizing what you said.
Yeah. That-
All right. let's move on. Mike,
You have my
go ahead and look for your stuff.
Yeah. Should be under
Who's,
copyright.
who
We're on
went
13. And it's
actually, we're gonna skip to
Mike.
21, please.
Okay.
Is it Mike's turn or?
Yeah, he's
Go
hunting.
ahead, here, 21.
Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah used to say, where there is no Torah, there is no Derech Erete. And where there is no Derech Erete, there is no Torah. Where there is no wisdom, there is no fear of God. And where there is no fear of God, there is no wisdom. Where there is no knowledge, there is no understanding. And where there is no understanding, there is no knowledge. Where there is no flower, there is no Torah. And where there is no Torah, there is no flower. Okay, now we're getting-
last section.
Now we're getting a little bit more on what my thinking is.
Which last
the
section?
flower.
Because if you have Torah and
Flower?
you understand, you understand about giving and cultivating and
Where there is
bringing
no
to the
flower.
altar,
With,
Shmini, Shmini, the seventh year when you have to let your crops.
Shemitah.
Shemitah, right, that let your
Shemitah.
crops.
But I'm really trying to just understand this phrase.
where
Where
there's
there
no
is no
flower.
flower, there is no
What's
Torah.
flower the metaphor for?
Food,
Food.
and
Okay,
Okay, so that's what they're
nutrients,
talking about.
nutrient for,
Where there's
nutrients
no
for the
flower,
brain.
where there's no food, there's
No
no Torah.
nutrition, no
Would-
nutrition for the
Would you
brain.
agree that, therefore, if you don't earn your living first to be able to feed yourself and your family, and move on to Torah and ignore the rest, you are wrong?
I think if you understand in Torah that you're supposed to be a good parent, a good person of God, a good spouse, a good daughter or son, you understand that you're supposed to take care of your family, that the work is not feeling like work. You know, you have to, you go go out there and you do it.
And the basis of that is like feeding yourself.
Right. It's nutrition for the mind, but you also understand in Torah your obligation to take care of your fellow person.
I don't think
what
fellow
is your
person here at
issue?
all.
No,
What is your issue? What specifically is your question, Sheldon?
I believe that there is a linear system. That you have to be able to make a living before you can really study Torah.
Who told you that?
That's
And
my
there,
question.
there are additional pieces of Pirkei Avot that would say, don't busy yourself so much with your business that you forget to study Torah, because you still must study Torah.
So that's
If you
the
never
balancing.
make time for yourself, you'll never have time for yourself.
Right,
But
but
also balancing.
But you also had the masters of the yeshiva. A lot of them had other jobs.
Right.
Some of them were supported by donations, but a good percentage of them had other jobs and did other things.
Okay, Mike,
the
you have covered-
the translation here is similar to but I don't really care for this translation 100%.
Of what?
Of Wachadodi. Enter in peace, O crown of your husband. Enter in gladness. Enter in joy. Come to the people that keep its faith.
What's the Hebrew?
Yes.
The word, the phrase, Sikula,
Yes,
is in
be
the
the,
Hebrew.
you want, I'll
Boy,
be glad to look
hallelujah,
at or whatever, but yeah.
Okay, so when you add that, there's a reason that we're separate people, and it relates to our practice and to the way that we're supposed to live. And I think you're 100% right in your statement that you have to know yours before you can incorporate someone else's, and that's
But
why
the question
there
is,
again.
are we incorporating, or are we doing something different? I mean, it's like, where are the borders, where are the edges? That's my question to you all, because I think it's a relevant question to each of us. So we have something that we believe is us and our Jewishness. Okay, great. And some people have had the experience of having, Buddhist practices as part of their Judaism. And so what else is possible? I mean, should we also include in it additional things? Or for us, doesn't that work? Maybe, these additional things should be over here.
Like a Venn diagram instead of
Well-
encompassing.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe we partake of a little bit, but we still have, our practice specifically. Where are the borders? Is the border that I can chant the name of Allah because Allah is close to El? Or is it because, Ishmael and our guys were on the same, they had the same father, Isaac and Ishmael? Or, is it too far over here to think, oh, I'm not going to do Ganesh or Kali or whatever the other ones are? Where do we draw the lines?
Well,
do we have multiple religious belongings, multiple religious identities?
It depends where you're sitting. If I was sitting in the same room, and if this was an Orthodox academy,
The answer would be no.
Right.
Right.
So now we have to actually think about it, contemplate it.
I agree with you in what you just said. And I would suggest that within that circle of Judaism, there are a number of practices and ideas that do fall into the realm of other religions, which has to do with maybe charity, maybe good deeds, maybe things like that don't affect our belief in the one and only God, or in our belief in the land of Israel, or our belief in the Torah. So in that way, we can let those ideas come in and we can joyfully participate in them. But they are not within our observance of Judaism. So I don't think they fall into that circle, other than they happen to be ideas that both.
Right, that's where the Venn diagram.
That it's complementary.
So let's say the Venn diagram is like the real big part here is the, this would be Judaism. Then the percentages might be just different. We here. Goodness, doing good deeds, mitzvah, charity, You know, so the big thing, the big picture would be here, especially what Mike said about it, or Sheldon said about being in an Orthodox class right now. So it would be percentages, the ratios might be different.
So do we have multiple religious identities?
Yes.
No, we have integrated.
Okay, that's a good way to say it too. But it's like our big picture is there, and then we might have little portion ratios that integrate.
You know, you ask yourself this question, what is Judaism, not Judaism? When you change one little thing, when you change two things, when you change three things?
And really, that is kind of the
Yeah.
question.
Because there are some things that are non-negotiable. It's being like a little pregnant. You either are or you're not.
Maybe. All right, so at least in the ecumenicism post site that we had on our Facebook, one of the issues is there's a single river, but yet there may be a Hindu well or a Christian well or a Jewish well, right? So they all draw down to the river, but there's lots of different ways to get it.
And in the
And maybe we set, maybe we share some of those, maybe we don't. Or you have a center hand, but yet we have, a number of different fingers, right? So, at any rate, those were the metaphors that they
You do
used.
realize if those people from outer space never landed here in different continents, we wouldn't have this problem.
Maybe that's it. Thank you.
It's just interesting.
will you invite them to our next discussion, please?
In terms of Jewish practice, it's just really interesting how Talmud has gone, from 1947 to today in such a wide range of Jewish practice. The
Shtetl, from Shtetl to wherever he was in Chabad.
For example, yesterday you said, well, besides I slip in there,
Hallel, yeah.
for Shodesh. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he said, what did Hashem tell you? He said that whole song. And, that's hard for that's, there's a formula for Hillel. But who's to say that we're supposed to follow the whole formula? Just Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, and he said, okay, on Rosh Chodesh, this is what you do. Who's to say he had it right?
Amen.
But that's what the
Maybe
Talmud
Talmud's got it right.
The Talmud's got all these interpretations.
Well, I know, the Talmud's got all these interpretations, and the Shulchan Aruch decided to be the definitive in the word, and say, okay, enough of the discussion, this is what we're going to do on Rosh Chodesh. Enough of the discussion, this is exactly what the situation is. I say, but who's to say that the discussion hadn't been in the 15th century?
Right.
That's right. And that's why
For some people it did, obviously for others of us it did not. Okay, so I've caught this number 21, where there is no Torah, there is no, whatever that is, proper manners. Where there is no proper manners, there is no Torah. Where there's no wisdom, there's no fear of God. Because one has to be wise to actually understand perhaps that. At least that's what this is suggesting. Where there's no fear of God, there is no wisdom. Where there is no knowledge, there is no understanding. And where there's no understanding, implying two different ways of learning, comprehending, discerning. And then, of course, the last one, which is if you can't eat, there's no Torah. And if there's no Torah, one can't eat.
These are always each of these have like
it's like response, it's like action, response, or
Right, but there's
action,
sort of
consequence.
mutually bound to
Right. Beneficial.
Where are we at? Mike, I think we're at 19.
19?
Yeah, back up to that one, because I think Rabbi Akiva has a little point here that might be
Okay,
helpful.
Rabbi Akiva said, all is for seed, but freedom is given. Freedom of
Sure.
choice is given. The world is judged in goodness, yet all is proportioned to one's work.
What does that mean?
All is proportioned. Somebody want to jump in with an explanation? Thoughts?
It seems like work has to have that balance again of work and study and family and
I guess
that
let me
whole
just start with
obligation
the
of that
all.
whole balance.
What does the all mean? All what? All of what?
So the world is judged in goodness, so that's the first
Okay, I can
part of it, right?
understand
I
that.
think the all is goodness.
And here it says God does not judge the world in general, and even the wicked with strict justice, okay? Divine mercy is always a factor in God's judgment, according to Rashi. Rambam says God goes beyond the strictures of pure justice and is slow to anger, abundant in kindness, both to the righteous and to the evil.
So the antecedent, it seems like, is goodness in this English.
Okay, so that's the first part.
But the freedom of choice, that was the story we had this weekend about the boats.
Oh, right.
Once you learn how you row the boats, you can take it down the Colorado River.
Well, that was the difference between Hashgacha Pratit is everything for sea, and God is divinely involved in everything, or is everything freedom of choice? So, wow, that bird is loud. And it's a great story, so do you want to tell it?
No, give you justice.
Okay, so we have two concepts. This doesn't answer your question. This is dealing with the first part of the sentence. Okay, so Hashgacha Pratit. Anybody? What does it mean?
I know I'm the least knowledgeable of
1256.
Hashgacha is like mashgiach, right? So hashgacha is that same like supervision kind of root, right?
Oh, yeah, so
Pratit, details,
all details
are supervised by Rabbanu Shalom, right? So this is one way to look at things. The other way is freedom of choice. Do we get to pick? Can we choose? Whatever it is we want to do. So there was a little story that Reb Zalman told. It was Reb Zalman, right?
No, there's a story.
Was it storyteller? Was it Reb Zalman? Okay, so there's the Rebbe goes with his disciples and they ask this question: Is it Hashgacha Pratit? Is God intrinsically involved in the world, or is there complete freedom of choice? So he takes his disciples out. He goes, okay, so let's go down to, I think it's Reb Zalman. Let's go down to the Bialystok, the river, and
It was Zalman.
Reb Zalman. So the first day they go to a lake and they grab the oars and they get out. They row on one side, right? So they learn that if you're rowing on this side, you're turning that way. If you're rowing on this side, you're turning this way. So they have this whole experience where they're learning traveling around the boat, learning how to turn, creating things. So the next day they go out and they ask the guy whose boat that they borrowed, let's go to the waterfall. And he goes, what, you crazy? You want to go to the waterfall? He goes, okay, well let's not go to the waterfall. Then let's go to whitewater. Okay, let's go to whitewater. So they get in and he goes, but you have to do every single thing I tell you, every single thing I tell you, yeah? Okay. So one guy's on the back and he's steering the boat, rowing on one side, rowing on the other, getting down the whole river. So what Reb Zalman says is both are true. Hashgacha Pratit is true. Hashgacha Pratit is probably like in the white water. God is really, everything is going according to God's plan. You got the white water trip down. Do we have freedom of choice? Yes, also. It's a different scenario. You've got the lake, and if you go one way, that's what happens. Go another way, that's what happens. Yeah, but you've got your own boat under your control, and you're kind of doing it. But there's two different ways, and they're not completely unique. It depends on what the water's like. Mike doesn't like it.
Right. Absolutely not. Because if we are to believe what we think, that God is, then why was there a Holocaust? Why does a family who has a child, one that turns out not healthy, I can't handle it.
Okay, so that's the question of theodicy,
We don't always have choice, I
And,
agree.
you can look for answers. You can say, well, so the doctors can learn how to cure that problem or have an insight into that
It's going to be
problem.
a mystery.
I don't, I believe, I'm a thorough believer that God gives a spark, that spark of life. I think it takes three beings to create life.
Okay, so thank you for bringing up theodicy. We are almost at our end. We still haven't addressed Sheldon's question, so let's just look briefly about what Rashi says. And everything depends on the abundance of good deeds. Okay, so this says, yet all is a portion to one's work. another translation of Hakol lefi rov ha'ma'aseh. So it's all according to your good deeds, or essentially what this is saying is karma. I mean, midah keneged midah, the ivrit, but the upshot is karma. So it depends upon your good deeds. Man is condemned or acquitted on the basis of the quality of the majority of his actions, which I think is what Reb Zalman was saying. I'm gonna let the chips fall where they may. I've done the best I could. I'm not gonna worry about so much of things that occurred ages ago. So, based on the quality of the majority of the actions, good or bad, that's what Rashi says. So everything means the scope of God's mercy is commensurate with man's deeds. The more good deeds he does, he indicates his desire for good, the greater the degree of divine mercy he has shown. Even the wicked are beneficiaries of divine goodness, although not to the degree the righteous enjoy. Rashi further suggests that this entire clause refers to the process by which God is able to judge the world benevolently. By temporarily looking aside from man's continuous pattern of transgression, God can allow the continued existence of the world. However, everything ultimately must be accounted for. God judges the world with goodness, and eventually everything is dependent on the abundance of good deeds, be they good or evil. So, the abundance of hopefully good deeds.
Thank you.
All right, Thank you very much. If you want to keep talking about this, Mike, I'm ready to talk to you.